It was a cold and dark September night when Paddy O'Reilly walked along the country roads on his way home. Paddy minded his own business and didn't even notice how oddly silent the night was, until a growing noise caught his attention. From the distance, he heard the rattling of hoofs getting louder and louder, and a shiver went down his spine, as he had a bad premonition. He barely dared to turn his head into the direction of where the noise was coming from. But it took him only seconds to realize that this premonition was right. From the distance, he saw two glowing red horse eyes. The nostrils of the horse seemed to breathe flames, and the hoofs seemed to cause fires wherever they touched the ground. But it was the glowing round thing at the height of the rider's arms that really frightened the life out of good old Paddy. He had heard of the tales of the soul-collecting rider and knew the fate that would wait for him if he couldn't escape the approaching threat. Without thinking twice, he found himself running. His home was already in sight. Maybe he could hide there, and the rider wouldn't find him. However, this seemed to be his only chance, and so he ran. The noise of the hoofs grew louder and louder, as if to tell good old Paddy,
"You can't escape me."
But Paddy ran without even looking back. Just as the noise sounded like the rider was just seconds away from him, Paddy managed to reach his house, slip through the door, and barricade it behind him. And just as the hoofs rattling was clearly approaching his house, it suddenly stopped. Paddy was shivering. He heard his poor old heart beating in his ears and feared that his heartbeat might give away his whereabouts. When he heard the snuffling of the horse right in front of the window and the rider dismounting the horse and coming up to his door, he waited. But for seconds that seemed to him like an eternity, nothing happened. He was about to think that he might be lucky after all, when suddenly the lock on his door unlocked itself and the doors and windows sprang wide open. Paddy nearly had a heart attack when he saw the rider standing in the doorframe. His appearance seemed to be frightening enough with his dark armor, but when Paddy looked at the spot where the rider's head should have been, he saw what he feared: nothing. Paddy's look gazed deeper, and then he saw the glowing head in the rider's hand. Paddy's eyes widened in fear, and it seemed that the head was just about to speak, when Paddy closed his eyes in fear and raised his hands as if to defend himself. He was sure that his end has come, but as he awaited his death sentence, seconds went by and nothing happened. Frightened but irritated, Paddy opened his eyes again, just to find the rider and his horse gone. Confused, he looked around, until his look went to his hands and stopped at the golden wedding ring on his finger. Paddy sighed in relief. May the Lord look over his dead wife Anna, for she might just have saved his life today. Welcome back to my channel. Today I want to talk about another omen of death, the Dullahan, the Headless Horseman of Irish mythology. The Dullahan is also known as Gan Ceann, which translates to without head, for he is the Headless Horseman, an impetuous ghostly horseman haunting rural areas, and an omen of inevitable death. But don't be fooled by the name Headless Horseman, for his head isn't missing. No, he carries his head, which smells like rotten cheese, under his arm. A rotting head with a sinister grin and eyes that constantly look around, and whose ghostly glare can be seen even in the darkest of nights. But the head is not just an asset to frighten the life out of anyone who sees it. No, it's a relic of power for the Dullahan, for if he lifts it high above his neck, it allows him to overlook everything, and to find his next victim even in the far distance. But not everyone who sees him is necessarily about to die. Those poor souls who are unfortunately enough to see the Dullahan but are not whom he seeks, are likely to survive the encounter, but not unmarked. For the Dullahan doesn't like to be seen. Some say you get blinded the second you look at the Dullahan, but it's actually more likely that the Dullahan himself will punish you by pouring a bucket full of rotten blood into your eyes, or using his whip made from a human spine to lash your eyes out. And if that happens to those he doesn't seek, imagine what happens to those he does seek. But if a Dullahan decides that someone is about to die, there is no running, there is no hiding. For, like Paddy discovered in the story, if a Dullahan arrives, all doors, all windows, all gates, and all locks will fly open, allowing him to enter, and there is no way to barricade yourself from him. And even the best of hideouts is of no use, because the head of the Dullahan is indeed able to speak, only once on his journey, and only towards his victim. For it will only speak the name of the victim, and as soon as the name is spoken, the victim's heart will stop at once, and the victim will drop dead. For the Dullahan just called out to the victim's soul, and called to death. There is no defying this call. So how come that Paddy survived the encounter? Well, to Paddy's luck, the Dullahan has one weakness: gold. The Dullahan cannot even pass the slightest amount of gold, so if you want to survive a Dullahan encounter, you should always carry a golden ring, coin, or something else with you. But make no mistake, the Dullahan won't give up on claiming the soul he sent out to seek. As soon as the golden object is out of the way, the Dullahan will end what he'd begun, and call your soul to meet its fate. Even though, until now, I referred and I will refer to the Dullahan as male, the Dullahan actually can also be female. But in either way, the Dullahan is a fairy and connected to the Banshee and other members of the Fae folk. While he's mostly known as a rider dressed in black, sitting on a single black horse with flaming red eyes, he can also be seen riding the Koshte Bauer, a carriage made out of coffins, tombstones, and human bones, drawn by 6 black horses. The carriage drives so fast that the nostrils of the horses breathe fire, and even the hooves produce fire, causing nearby bushes and grass to burst into flames. But despite this, the carriage always seems to be perfectly silenced, sneaking up to the victims. If the Dullahan drives the Koshte Bauer, he follows the distant call of a Banshee, and when called, the carriage must always leave with a soul. But where does this horrific creature have its origins? Well, the Dullahan derives from an ancient Irish tale dating back to pre-Christian times, when King Tigamas ruled Ireland. Tigamas worshipped Crom Cruach, also known as Crom Duff, the worm god, or the dark crooked one. Tigamas used to sacrifice human souls to Crom Duff every year by decapitating his victims. This cruel tradition actually only ended with the arrival of the Christian missionaries, leaving the dark god hungry. The Dullahan is either the embodiment of Crom Duff collecting souls himself to satisfy his hunger, or they are his servants, collecting souls for their master. Maybe that's why the Dullahan is often seen in August and September, in the nights of the old sacrifice festivals. In nowadays, tales of Headless Horseman can be found in several European countries, as well as all over the world. For example, there are several German stories including some tales of the Brothers Grimm about Headless Horseman. But probably the best known story of a Headless Horseman might be the Legend of Sleepy Hollow, written by Washington Irving, telling the story of a Hessian soldier who lost his head during the American Revolution, shortly before Halloween, and who is said to have risen during the festival of Halloween to search for it. In fact, the Legend of Sleepy Hollow is so popular that not only Disney made a movie adaptation out of it, But you probably know the 1999 movie of Tim Burton, featuring Johnny Depp. And if you haven't watched it yet, I would say it's time to do so. But the Dullahan, or the Headless Horseman, also made its way into various video games. For example, if you roam the forests of Skyrim at night, you might find the Headless Horseman searching for his head. And even the 90s game King's Quest VII had a Headless Horseman haunting a graveyard. And on the same graveyard, you could find his wife, who died of a broken heart because, well, her husband was decapitated. But she is still weeping at his gravesite and has an astounding resemblance to a banshee. So, if you ever hear the thunder of hooves at night following you, better close your eyes and hope you have something golden at hand, for it might be the Dullahan trying to claim your soul. Thank you for listening. And if you want to know more about death omens or Celtic folklore, check out my other videos. And if you liked the video, please leave a thumbs up. See you next time. Bye!